Welcome to Back on the Broomstick,
A modern witch's spoken word grimoire.
where two witchy friends from way back are reconnecting to their pagan roots after a long period of mundanity.
We're rewalking the path of the wise and trying out all the latest spells, rituals, and magical theory in today's witchcraft and pagan practices.
So grab your wand and your incense
Your cauldron and your crystals
and join us
as we get
back on the broomstick.
Hi, I'm Laylla.
And I'm Shell. And today we are going to talk about something so fun. Layla, tell us what we're going to talk about.
We are going to be talking about festivals at Brushwood Folklore Center. We're also going to be featuring some personal stories from people at Brushwood Folklore Center.
Super exciting, by the way. And, not everybody has had the opportunity to partake in summer festival season. And to you, I say, put it on your bucket list.
Oh, yeah.
There is nothing like it. There's no vibe like it.
You have not lived until you have been listening to drumming around a bonfire under a summer full moon. There's nothing like it.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I mean, this is a festival. I mean, I would say roughly maybe give or take about 2,000 people participate.
Maybe a little bit lower than that. Attendance since COVID is still down a tiny bit, but things are starting to ramp up. And they always do these festivals big at Brushwood. I'm talking about the Sankofa, which is relatively new. I think it's about a decade or so old. And the Sirius Rising Festival, which is going to be celebrating, I think, their 30th anniversary next year.
Oh, I love Sirius. Now, if you're unfamiliar with Brushwood Folklore Center, this is located in Western New York, and this is
New York. Yep.
This is an outdoor location. I know that there are festivals around the country and internationally that are held in hotels and such, but this is an outdoor location, camping, the whole nine. The best bonfires you can imagine. It's almost like going home. Home.
It is home. They even say welcome home right when you come in, whether it's your first time or your 50th time. Brushwood started out as an artist retreat. Frank, the man who owned Brushwood, he's passed away. His wife and his daughter and her husband currently run it. He was an artist, and he was one, I believe, of four brothers. And when their father passed away, the land was divided up into parcels. And Frank took the one that was the least farmable, but the most campable. It's beautiful.
Oh, gorgeous.
There are acres and acres of land, rolling fields. There are the fairy woods.
Well, pond.
There's ponds. There's a couple ponds. They have built over the years different areas. There's the Nematon, which is a very spiritual place. There are shrines to each of the elements, the air, fire, water, and earth shrines, as well
Fairy
as
woods.
The fairy woods. There's a spirit shrine with a labyrinth. The place is very, very spiritual. I found it when going to a festival for Zydeco music for a band called Hypnotic Clambake. It was the Hour Festival, the Outrageous Universalist Revival Festival. And as we were driving in the middle of the night to pick our campsite, we go by what looked to me to be maypoles. And I'm like, those are motherfucking maypoles. And as we roll down the windows, I hear the drumming coming from the roundhouse. And I'm like, that's pagan drumming. Wait a minute. This is the pagan place. I know it is.
I feel it.
I feel it. And indeed it was. And I started going to the pagan festivals there ever since. And it's just a magical, lovely place.
As you can imagine, I then was introduced to it by Layla.
Yeah.
And like to the point where, remember back when we had seasonal sites there? Because also, folks, you can get a seasonal campsite at this place, and you can camp even during non-festival season, which is equally magical on a different level.
The people that camp there as seasonals love this place, and it is a true community, and they are all invested in making this very magical space even more magical and welcoming.
There's something spiritual about Western New York.
It really is. It's a great place. This used to be home to the Starwood Festival, which is now, I believe, being held in Ohio. So
Right.
Like Shell said, we highly recommend getting to pagan festivals because it is a wonderful way for those of us who don't have community at home, who don't have a coven or a group to worship with, to immerse yourself in a witchy pagan lifestyle.
Right. And, there are some great festivals all across the country, not just in upstate New York. And if you Google them, you're going to find that there are some good, reasonable prices. And I'm telling you, if you can get to one, this is like bucket list stuff.
Yes.
Truly, that just the experience, you can't replace it.
You can't. And they do workshops. And as we've mentioned earlier on this show, I was there as a presenter. I presented several workshops. Um, and we'll talk about those at a later date. But I did workshops on sigils, spell jars, and I did a 3-part series on podcasting on how to get your voice out there, how to, you know, get your magical witchy story told. And part of what I did throughout the week was listen to people's stories. How did they find Brushwood? How did they find these festivals? What brought them home? And also, what kind of story did they want to tell to our listeners? What did they have to say about themselves? And the very last day of the festival, the very last workshop I did at the festival, we recorded some of those stories. And one woman, a very famous pagan, a lot of you will recognize her name when we get to her story, told us 2 very moving stories. So that was pretty special.
And I was very thankful because although you were knee deep in hosting workshops at a festival, I was on my own private vacation. I was actually sad to be on my vacation, but I was actually able to tap in via Zoom to the last workshop, so I as well was a participant in the conversation. And great people, great stories. And I really can't wait to share some of these stories with our listeners, because this is part of why I like the festivals, because you do get the camaraderie, you do get, that magical environment, but you get the workshops and you get these seminars where you can learn and gain information and make connections with people, and kind of take things next level. It's not all about the ritualistic part of it or the quote unquote fun part of being out in nature and camping part of it. There's also that educational piece to these festivals. And
Yes.
again, experiences that just can't be replaced.
And you did the WitchCon online
Correct.
festival earlier this year, which was fabulous. So many classes,
Absolutely.
so many wonderful presenters. And this is the same kind of thing, but in
In
person.
person. Yeah.
You'd get the workshops all day long that you get to choose from. And trust me, it was really hard to choose which
That's the
workshops
one
to
thing
go
I hate
to.
about festivals, because it's like 9 workshops are all at 1 o'clock that I want to take.
Right? Do I go to the belly dancing workshop? Do I go to the fire spinning workshop? Or do I go to paganism in the 90s? It's
Like
hard, man.
it's hard, and sometimes I get frustrated. So all you festival organizers that are listening, there has to be some way where it's like pick your own schedule. Just saying.
But even with all the wonderful classes, at night there's the bonfires and the rituals and the
The
dancing.
dancing. Yep.
And it goes until dawn. And falling asleep to the sound of drums is something that I love in the summertime.
So it's that spiritual slash educational blissful week of happiness.
Yeah, exactly. And so I asked people how I was all about the stories. I wanted to hear people's witchy voices. How did they find home, or how did they find their way home to Brushwood, to these festivals? And also, what kind of stories did they want to tell? And Shell and I kind of explained how we found Brushwood. I went there to a music festival and realized it was actually had a witchy heart. And of course, dragged my witchy bestie there with me, who also fell in love with it. Then we found out that another long-term friend of ours, who ended up being in coven with us later, also had gone there. Quite a few of our community would go there
You've
as
been there, and
well.
you've been there, and you've been there.
Yeah, and we realized that all these people that we loved and cared about had connections to this place and had connections to these festivals. So, like Shell said, it is a fabulous way to not just immerse yourself in that witchy lifestyle, gain knowledge, but also to gain a lot of connections and meet a lot of wonderful people, whether it's online or in person.
And I know you had the blessing of being there for 2 weeks for both festivals, and you met some wonderfully fabulous people. and made some beautiful connections. But just tapping in to your final workshop from my vacation, I felt like I was able to almost like transpose myself to Brushwood for that little while and have those same connections. And I was able to interact with wonderful, great people. But unfortunately, I just couldn't see them in person.
So, straight from these wonderful pagans, we're going to give you a couple of their stories about things that they're interested in. I believe we have one gentleman who discovered a talent for ghost hunting,
Which I love.
Yeah, in his love of trains, he discovered he was picking up some ghostly voices, and so he's kind of gone with that. And then we also have Jo Frost, the daughter of Gavin and Yvonne Frost, speaking to us about the passing of her mother and some of her experiences as well.
We're going to hear from some of our workshop participants, got some great stories. Also, interestingly enough, we had a conversation with Jo Frost in this workshop. Fun fact, Laylla and I participated in a workshop at Brushwood with Gavin and Yvonne. What would you say, like about 25-ish years ago?
Yeah, I'd say maybe a little less than that. It was a very interesting workshop, very magical, definitely pushed a lot of my boundaries, and the space that it was in was fantastic. But I can't say it was the most comfortable of workshops.
I almost want to say that when I realized that Jo was a part of this workshop of yours, it almost felt like a full circle moment because of having done a workshop at Brushwood with her parents all those years ago. And then, just recently doing a workshop via Zoom at Brushwood with their daughter. It felt so full circle, and it was wonderful. But let's stop talking and let's listen to your last workshop at Brushwood.
We'll start our stories with Shannon from the YouTube channel They Still Speak.
Well, I would always take my camera with me when I go up there, and I believe this was the Halloween trains.
Mm-hmm.
They get to their little pumpkin patch thing that they create there, and then they basically park the train while the kids and the parents and grandparents, whatever, get off and go pick out a pumpkin, get their face painted and all that. And after the parents and grandparents and kids cleared off the car, I thought to myself, this would be a good time to get some interior shots of the car.
Sure.
So I, shoot the interior of the car. Didn't notice anything out of the ordinary at the time.
So now this is like an old-fashioned train car?
Old-fashioned, yes. It started as a Canadian National commuter car in the Montreal area. But anyway, I shoot maybe 5 or 6 minutes worth of footage.
Mm-hmm.
And after I got home later that night and downloaded it, I thought, let's take a look at it and see how it turned out. While I'm looking through it, I hear, I'm the only one in the car at the time.
Right.
And the kids and parents, they're far enough off in the field that I'm not really hearing them.
Mm-hmm.
But I hear this, what sounds like whispering.
Oh, like in the background of your video?
In the background, yes.
Oh my goodness.
And I thought, I must be imagining things.
Right.
So I played it back again. Still there.
Still hear the whisper.
Yeah, the whisper. Yeah, it was still there. And I was thinking, am I muttering to myself or something? But what happened next thoroughly dispelled me of that. Because I turned the volume all the way up on what sounds like the whispering. It is a man's voice speaking in French Canadian.
Oh, wow.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, wow. And that matches the history of the car.
Right. Which was built in, I think, 51 or 53 for service in Montreal, where it stayed until 1996.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah.
And that was your first experience capturing it on...
That I'm aware of, yes.
Wow.
Someone went to work and they didn't realize they died, and they were still working on the train.
Quite possible, or it's just someone who rode it to work every day and back, and maybe they don't realize they're dead yet.
Right, exactly.
Or they have some real energy invested.
Mm-hmm.
Having a very high emotional experience and an emotion gets trapped in the metal.
Exactly.
The furnishings of the car.
Yes, and we've noticed that repeatedly. It might not necessarily be that that person's spirit is there. It could be maybe they had a lot of intense emotions every day on their commute to work, and that imprinted on the train itself. And that's interesting.
And then about the same time, I was shooting a lot of other train footage. And so I thought, well, if this happened once, and I started noticing I was getting all these voices on they use the sound, well, they can manipulate any sound to speak. They use the sound of the train to speak, the energy. And I have gotten all kinds of different voices, different ages, different accents. Some are very, very negative, very angry, and some are very kind and loving and even helpful. And one thing I have noticed in terms of evolution is that when I first started doing this, I would say that probably 90% of the EVPs I got fell under the classification of angry or unhappy.
You think that changed, though?
Yeah, oh yes, definitely. I can see it in the most recent ones I've gotten over the last, say, 6 months or so. It's now probably 60 or 70% positive, loving. I get various voices on there all the time telling me, I love you, we love you, or there was even one that said, God loves you.
Oh, wow. Now,
that was at a cemetery, though.
Do you think that the change has been where you're picking these up? Do you think it's a change in you?
I think it's more in me because it's pretty much the same locations. Although I found that when it comes to me getting EVPs, location really doesn't seem to matter a great deal. I could turn my camera on in the middle of a mall parking lot and probably get multiple EVPs.
Well, it sounds like from your earlier experiences, it could be. This could be a you thing. I
think it is. I think I have a connection, whether I want it or not. I have a connection,
right?
Because it is a mixed blessing. Now, the only times I've really had a problem getting just attracting EVPs was one time I took just as an experiment. I took the camera out and to the edge of this farm field that's miles out in the country. No houses nearby, no towns nearby. Nothing. That's been one of the only times that has happened. Usually I'll at least get one or two. And sometimes it's like wall to wall. And it's like once they get started, it's just...
Everybody kind of once one comes in, everybody kind of piles in. Well,
and they will...
They're all lining up for their conversation with
you.
Yep, they find that opening.
Although I have to say that some of the things that they say, it's like, okay, you have this microphone to the world, as it were, to speak. So why would the choice of first things to say be donuts or something like that?
That's a good question.
I might say that.
Right?
That's like a...
Yeah. Well, it's like if you have a message for the world, what is it? Donuts.
I wonder if some of that is due to the recording factor as opposed to it being an actual entity that's trying to speak. If some of it could just be recorded.
Yeah, I've thought of that, but almost every time when I'm out by the tracks, it's just me. There's no one nearby. Now, on the outside chance that I could be just picking random snippets of conversation from several blocks away.
That could be.
But I mean, I would encourage anyone to check out my recordings and see, decide for themselves.
Yeah, definitely. And again, what was the name of the channel?
They Still Speak.
Perfect. Thank you so much,
But
Shannon. But Caroline, did you want to say anything? Talk about maybe your experience here at Brushwood or anything that you've enjoyed here?
I'm not sure how much would fit. Why don't you move on to Joe?
Okay.
Well, and it's funny because I was going to invite Caroline to speak because I think she and I shared the gong bath earlier this week.
Oh, yes,
and,
I would love
and
to hear about
Caroline
that.
has such a special smile, and you can tell, like she's enjoying her experience. It seems like you're enjoying your experience at Brushwood, and I would love to hear from you about, like really fully engaging festival or the gong bath or something. It just is, I think you have something really special to contribute.
I agree.
Okay, all right.
So, Michelle, this is Caroline. This is Shannon's partner, and I believe this is your first time here at Brushwood.
This is my first time here at Brushwood. I have never been here before.
I'm so excited for you.
And it's been not quite what I expected. I am here because Shannon had come to Brushwood and Starwood
Starwood, yes.
and wanted to come back. And I wasn't sure if he was going to be okay camping or...
I wouldn't have been.
Better together, right? Better
Yes,
together.
yes.
There you go.
Oh, she was a Girl Scout.
Yes, and we got a decent tent and a serious cot, so I figured, okay, I'll try almost anything once.
It's a good attitude.
So I got here and I looked at the program and I said, okay, I've got to go try some of these things and just to see what's going on. The first workshop I went to was on managing stress. Our presenter did not show up.
I guess they managed their stress very well.
I have a story for that.
Oh,
So we have here at Brushwood, there is North Stage and North Pavilion. So the story that I heard was the presenter went to North Pavilion to present the workshop, and the participants were at North Stage. And the presenter sat at North Pavilion and thought, wonder who all those people are there for that workshop. What workshop is that? And it eventually occurred to him it might be his workshop. But he was afraid to leave the pavilion in case anybody came to the pavilion for the workshop. So there was just a touch of confusion between the two
bit of
North
mix-up.
settings. Yeah. So it was.
At any rate, after about 5 minutes, one of the people said, well, we may not have a presenter. Why don't we talk among ourselves? So we had a very good discussion. It turned out to be a very good workshop, probably very different from what it would have been if our presenter had been there. And I'm glad to know what happened.
Sometimes those are the best ones, though, to be honest.
So we exchanged stories. We exchanged different ways that we dealt with stress, everything from medications and drugs of various kinds, to exercise, to biofeedback, to relaxation techniques, to shouting at the world, and then at the end agreed that what was discussed was going to stay in the workshop
nice.
because some of it was private.
I think that's a nice boundary setting right there.
Yes,
Good to
right.
take care of each other. I like that.
Okay, let's see. Went to the gong immersion for women. I thought, okay, this sounds interesting. It'll be a different experience.
And what a gong immersion is, it's a sound bath, right? They have different gongs and
yes.
they hit. Can you tell us a little bit about what went on?
Well, there were a lot of people there, and people managed to get themselves arranged into places.
Mm-hmm.
And our presenter had. Do you remember how many gongs? She must have little ones,
10,
bigger,
probably 10
probably
gongs.
10.
Oh,
Up
10.
to-
Nice.
30-some inches, little bitty ones.
So all different size gongs.
About 10 mallets of different kinds.
Wow.
So we sat there for about an hour. On one level, it was a gong concert.
Mm-hmm.
And on another level, it was a spiritual experience to just listen to the sound and feel the sound come through you. And then in the background, there were robins calling throughout almost the entire hour. That's it. They're ubiquitous here at Brushwood, and there is in fact a robin nest at one of the trailers.
Very nice. And that I've been to one sound meditation like that, and when you said that you felt the sound, on one level it was a concert, and on the other you could feel it. You really can feel that sound. I was surprised and amazed, I think, when I went to it, that I could literally feel it. It shifted my brain and my body. Did you?
Yes, and I think there is that recent movie called Everything Everywhere All at Once, which I think describes the experience, because part of it I was feeling like the beginning of the universe, and part of it I was feeling like the end of our universe. And then, of course, we came back to our current universe.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful. I'm so glad you got to experience that.
And I felt, sort of at the time that a lot of the people I know who have passed were there with us.
They're always here.
Yes.
Everywhere.
Sometimes
you-
we can feel them better than others.
But
Yeah.
sometimes you feel them and sometimes you don't. So
I love that. That sounds like a beautiful experience. I'm so
Yes.
glad you got that here. I'm so glad. That's wonderful. So do you think you'll come back?
do you think we'll come back? I think
Probably.
yes. When before I got here, this was in the category. Okay, I'll try it once, but I don't expect it to work out. But
You
right
had
now
to be
it is-
talked into it.
Yes. And there have been a fair number of birds here. I'm an active birder, so
So past the roundhouse, there's a path that goes back into the woods, and we're camped out there. And there's a variety of birds back there that you don't necessarily see up here.
now, is that getting into the fairy woods?
I'm further back.
You're further back. Okay.
Yeah, because I don't people well. So
I relate to that.
I like that. I'm going to steal that.
that's okay.
So we have about half an hour left, and we still have Joe and Ed the Pagan. That's right. Ed the Pagan here. If either of you would like to share a little of your story.
I had a couple of things, and you guys can kind of, vote by committee about what. So there's the first thing, which is I conducted my mother's service here Sunday, and then shaved my head afterwards. And then the other thing is the crux of living, loving our mother yesterday, which is being able to be pagan in a mainstream way and live my values in a mainstream way. So I don't know which one would be more interesting to the folks at hand. Michelle, you have a say if you'd like to have a say too. So who has an appetite for what kind of thing?
Would you, Michelle? Joe's offering to share either talking about her mother's service that she conducted here, or the living, loving your mother.
Living, loving our mother.
Do you have a preference for what she?
Jeez, I'm intrigued by both. This is a quandary. I'm gonna go with a service for her mother because I like to hear about how people honor those who have passed from our spiritual perspective.
And if you wouldn't mind, I also would like to cast my vote for that as well, because I have lost several people this year, and it's been a tough year.
Sorry.
And so it's okay. It's okay. And so hearing that, I think might help. I think that would touch people.
So my mother is, I don't think that's a past tense thing, Yvonne Frost. And so my parents are Gavin and Yvonne Frost, who founded the Church and School of Wicca and were activists in the religious freedom movement as well as in the pagan, bringing witchcraft to everybody.
Can I just stop you for a quick second? Did you say your parents are Gavin and Yvonne Frost?
Yeah.
Yes.
Wow, I'm glad I picked this one.
I try to keep a low profile, but I
sorry
think
for your loss, but I'm very
Thanks.
interested in this.
I try to keep a low profile, but I'm starting to kind of own that role in the community. And so I've been coming to Brushwood for nearly 30 years, raising my kids here. Did children's programming because that's what I wanted as a kid, because I was one of the few children in the pagan community in the 70s. And so I kind of led the way to have children's programming at Brushwood when that was happening here. And
Bravo.
yeah, it matters. We need to build this next generation.
It does
for sure.
matter.
So I did my mom's service here. My mother, both of my parents were obviously interesting characters. It takes a lot of personality to be able to stand up like that. And they had very large personalities, and I was kind of the entourage for a long time. And I'm really comfortable with that role. I'm really comfortable about being behind the scenes. So Gavin passed in, I think, 2016. And within about 6 weeks, it was clear that Yvonne was not really good at living on her own. And so I moved her in with me. And they weren't getting great medical care. And so I kind of managed all of that and improved things for her and helped her get healthier, and which led to healthy life, healthy gut. And so I do a lot with fermented foods and building people up physically through kind of anecdotal, although they're starting to research this more between healthy gut and what's happening in your brain. Mm-hmm. And so I got Yvonne stronger and healthier, and in the whole getting the aging mother stronger and healthier, she just got meaner and meaner towards me, because she's like, this is not how I wanted to stop controlling my life, child. I did my own religion. Stop this. So she's quite a character and an
Some
interesting
point you
person.
change roles, right?
Yeah, absolutely. An interesting person to live with. So she was always a little bit of a disruptor. Let's go. That's the modern parlance for who she is. And so she eventually, at the beginning of lockdown, had convinced one of her old beaus prior to Gavin that she needed rescuing from me and my controlling her life. And so he came and rescued her from me. And so she spent the last 3 years of her life. And the older son called her the 90-year-old 90-day fiance. They remarried, and she spent 3 years very happily with her husband, and passed away February 14th of 2023. And so
I'm very sorry to hear that.
I appreciate it. Her current husband, the most recent widower, he said she had asked for no service. But when I did Gavin's service many years ago, she said, "This is what I want. I want service in community, and I want this group." And Brushwood, of course, needed, because they had been coming here for 30 years, some kind of mark of that passing. And so we did a service Sunday afternoon, July 16th, and we called quarters, and it was a small service. It was smaller than I expected, because I did try to make it available for people to come into Brushwood on a day pass. So I have money kind of ferreted away so that people could come to Brushwood on a day pass to participate in Yvonne's service, since it was the only service held for her. And I wanted to open it because my mother and I had a difficult relationship. I started the service, invited people in. We sang "We All Come from the Goddess," and then I got out of the way so that people from the community could honor not just Yvonne's memory, but the dynamic couple that Gavin and Yvonne were. And so people shared their memories. We recorded that, and we'll eventually broadcast that, but we wanted to edit a little bit of it. And but gosh, there was some beautiful stuff shared. And then we went up to the studio after I shaved my head, because I'm now the oldest of the family, and there is a tradition.
What is the significance of shaving your head as the elder of your family? Can you just talk about that real quick?
So there's a little bit of cultural appropriation. There are people in the Middle East who it's traditionally Hindu families, I think. And again, it's vague. I meant to review it before I talked about it. But the oldest son, when the parents die, the oldest son will typically shave his head. And I don't have an oldest son. So, to mark the passing of the generation, I shaved my head in honor of that rite of passage.
I think that speaks to a lot of cultures. There are several cultures that have traditions around that, and hair is such a personal thing, and it grows with us through these years.
It holds everything.
It holds all of that.
Yeah.
And she was in some of that hair,
Absolutely.
and I can very much see the blessing of the release of that as part of honoring.
The only real interesting aspect of that is I'm pretty introverted, and of course shaving your head is like being pregnant. You become public domain.
Yeah.
And so apparently a female with a shaved head, and not only is it, people are like, "We're really sorry that you're sick." It's all in my brain, guys. It's all mental health. It's not anything else. And then it's, of course, Rub the Bald Woman. So I've become the good luck Buddha of Brushwood.
You're rocking it, by the way.
Thank you.
I feel for you for why you did it, but you actually look great bald. So.
Well, I'm pretty sure I'm going to keep it. It depends on how my boss in the mundane world handles it. Because I've pushed some boundaries at work before, and I'm not sure how she's going to respond to this. So watch her face. But I may be keeping this for a while. So we had a wonderful experience. There are some people who have come from a fur piece to celebrate Yvonne's life, and the neighbor here came about 800 miles to celebrate Yvonne's passing.
Yeah.
And I feel like we've done the right thing to honor her memory, and so I'm grateful for that.
I know that they were a part here.
Albeit very late, but all hail the travelers.
Travelers.
All hail.
Thank you for sharing that. I very much appreciate that. And having.
Yes, thank you.
I have done service here for people, private ones that have passed. The space here, the spirit labyrinth, and then the ancestor mound. The space here is fabulous. I mean, it's very, you can't walk out there without feeling it because of the people, I think, that have walked there and have come there with those emotions. Like you were saying earlier, Shannon.
Right.
You know, it very much is a place of peace and, remembrance. It's a nice spot, and I love it.
Gavin and Yvonne's wedding rings are at the Ancestor Mound and contained within the Ancestor Mound now.
Oh, that's beautiful. It's a nice tribute.
That is.
It's true that you're more likely to find spiritual activity at a location that has seen a lot of human interaction over the years with it. And that's why you can go in, like, way out in the middle of nowhere and find nothing, and just an area in a city or a cemetery or something, and lots of activity.
Yes. Lots of people have been there, and, back and forth. And just like this property here.
Lots of intense emotions as well.
The people for decades have walked Brushwood, and this place has so many stories and has held so many different lives, and people have met here and been created here.
Right.
Yeah.
It's definitely a place that brings a lot of characters, I think.
And then there are presumably those who have transitioned to come back.
That's right, and then they come back. We hope. And then we have Ed the Pagan.
Actually,
Ed,
be heard?
why don't you come over here?
Oh no, I want to say this really quick. I'm Ed the Pagan. I'm glad to be here at Brushwood. I think you should be listening to this. But I want to hear your second story. I'd like to give up that time to hear the second story.
I would like that as well. Thank you, Ed.
And
Well,
so
thank
everybody
you.
listening, and this is a rare opportunity for me. I'm really excited to have met you.
Thank you, Ed.
Well,
This is
thank
it.
you. Yes, we would love to hear your second story.
So, and
Joe.
if you want to know more about the Church and School of Wicca, there is still a living, breathing website, although I'm navigating some technical issues. It is wicca.org, so wicca.org is our website. We have YouTube. I have a Twitter handle, all the social media stuff. So living, loving our mother is something that I have invested a lot of energy in. We, as pagans, we don't often feel welcome into community unless we somehow hide who we are and what we're doing. I think, culturally, in the United States, of course, we have a lot of conservative people with conservative values who are somehow louder than people with less conservative values. And so I see lots of nods happening here.
Yes.
Particularly in some parts of the country.
Well, and I'm a teacher in a high school in West Virginia, so I absolutely respond to that.
You have my sympathies.
I'm good. So I teach math so that people don't think I'm recruiting for Wicca in the math classroom, which would be kind of an entertaining behavior. But in living my values, the Church and School of Wicca's mission statement is to create green spaces in places that are less green. And at my high school, there was a pond donated by a graduating class. And the pond had become stagnant and was one of the most toxic sites in West Virginia, as determined by the EPA and the DEP.
Oh, geez, they donate it and it becomes the most toxic thing.
Right. And so, the pond was donated and built around the time the Church and School of Wicca was started and around the time that I was started. And I thought, this is something I really want to get involved with. And I'm a master gardener. So green space is master garden. And that kind of is really complementary to our mission. And they're reclaiming this pond and making it a more green site. And so we have been involved now for about 5 years with putting in pollinator gardens and putting in and naturalizing that habitat. So we have a wetland there now. And this is all at this high school. So it's, it's all the biology classes get to go out there and identify plant life and bird life and insect life. And so they're really having, we have this outdoor lab at this school. And this year we raised enough money with my sustainability club to plant 21 native trees at the site. And so Earth Day was a very hard, very long day with an awl going into old kind of beat up ground, planting trees. But so we're trying to build this green space, and the site itself with this reclamation project has been nominated for an EPA success story. So I'm living my values hard.
Yes.
Right?
Doing the work.
But it's not, people are not saying, oh, this is this pagan thing and we can be resistant to the pagan thing because I'm reclaiming the wetland. So
I've heard that twice, and I just want to speak to that quickly. You're the second person that I've talked to, one was another presenter, who is living pagan values out loud, who is using them in the community but feeling the need to tone down the pagan aspect of it, but doing these things and presenting them in a more palatable way to the mainstream, I guess. And I'm feeling a way about it. On the one hand, I'm loving it because get that shit out there. We need to do this. We need, however we can get the right message out there, do it. And on the other hand, I'm like, why can't we say this is a pagan thing? And so I don't know. It's tough, and I'm loving that you're doing it, though.
I don't want my children to have some of the early memories that I have of
No,
the cross
exactly.
being burnt in my front yard, of brand new kitchen cabinets being shot out from the road, and there being no repercussions.
Yeah.
I don't want
Yes.
my children to have those experiences. So they've had some pushback. Teachers or people in the community have felt empowered to hand my children Bibles and say, you need this in your life. Holy Bibles, not witches of Bibles, and say you need this in your life. However, my children have said, we're not confused. We get presents at Christmas and at solstice. We're good. So
Right.
I think that's a much healthier reaction
Yes.
than what I had. But Gavin and Yvonne were advocates, and they were fighters, and they,
And you
huge.
saw the as the person who bore the brunt as the child, you saw the difficulty of that. And
Right.
so
my children have had very different childhoods than what I did.
And again, that goes to I love that you're doing it and that you found a way to do it to protect yourself and your children and to still get the message out there. But I hate that you have to be quiet about it. Sucks.
I can answer from a financial point of view. I just got finished being almost 8 years a industrial worm farmer in Chicago, selling worms through Amazon and compost and all of that. And I was at the worm guy. Even though I was still doing pagan values, nobody wanted to hear my values. What they wanted to hear, you want to sustain the earth, and 2, you're going to save me money. So it became more important for them to live by the values of being an earthworm farmer, right, and being this sort of thing, than it was about my spirituality.
Gotcha.
And when they found out my spirituality, they go, oh, that makes sense. You're giving us money. So it was better for them to learn what we were doing first. And I agree with you. And my teenage children had the same. I was more active as a teenager. My teenage children, my grandchildren don't even have that. To give you such an impact, my children have asked me never to carry pictures of them in public. My wallet, if you get it, it's only my ID. There's no pictures of my kids, no my addresses, no families, no numbers. And that's because with what you went through much worse than they did.
Right.
Yeah, to that degree. It's hard. It's hard. Activists, pagans are hard on their children, and we should respect that.
Yes.
Well, and I've had people ask me, we want to be leaders in our community. And their kids are playing at our feet. We want to be leaders in our community, and it can wait 15 years. You can wait and take care of the family first, and bring those kids up in a loving, hopefully safe environment.
Yes. So that they can not have those difficult memories, but still have the good ones and start to, live those values and out loud. Hopefully. Yeah. Hopefully. I can't believe it's been this many decades and we're still in the broom closet in a lot of ways.
I like that as a title for something. Still in the broom closet or in the broom closet.
Yeah, still in the broom closet. Well, we're back on the broomstick, so.
Take the stick out of the closet.
That's right. Take it out of the closet.
You gotta crawl before you walk. You gotta walk before you fly.
Yeah.
You gotta. So we're still crawling fighting for acceptance and fighting for.
And I love your pond project. That's fantastic. You took something that was the most toxic site, and now you won an award for the biggest turnout.
It's a team. It was definitely a village. It wasn't just me.
Oh
but
yeah, that's a lot of work.
Yeah.
I love that. That's fantastic. And it's a big enough pond that you said the biology students go out there and they use it as part of the curriculum and everything. That's fantastic.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you for doing that. I think that's wonderful. And for teaching the class here about it. Gut health and the whole fermented food. You touched on that a little earlier. I'm going to have to pick your brain on that
I may need to retitle it Rage Cooking because you make cabbage weep, which is really kind of gratifying.
Well, see, rage cooking would probably get more people interested. That's a title right there for sure.
I might actually learn to cook for that.
There you go.
It's not dinner till somebody bleeds in our house, and I'm a vegan, but it's not dinner till somebody bleeds.
All right. Well, I think we are just about out of time, so I'm going to say thank you so much. Ed, I appreciate you giving up a little bit of time there for Joe. But
this is just a rare opportunity. Everybody can hear me, so if you want to hear me, Pagan World TV and that sort of thing, you can find me easy.
That's right.
Joe,
Joe's harder to find.
I want to see more of her.
That's right.
Everybody said,
all
let's
do.
encourage her. We want to see more of her.
We do, actually. You have a unique voice and something that people need to hear, you know, with all the things that you're doing. It's so important. And focusing on the kids, coming here with my kids I think it was one of the best things that we did with them. You know, the things that they learned, the memories that they made here, the classes they went to. I think it's really helped them be more caring people. And so I love that aspect of what you've done as well. You know, it's really
We
good.
noticed a difference. And for any parent who's listening, who's on the edge about whether or not they take their kid to a festival, be selective about where you take your kids. But you gotta take your kids to festival, because my kids were different the years that we were unable to make it here. They were much more grounded through the winter. They could help them manage school, all of those things, and deal with the mundane world in a different way. But the years that we didn't make it here, I could see a difference.
I agree. I think even for adults here, the freedom that you have here to be who you are, you know, to literally dance to your own rhythm and be, you know, express that part of yourself is so important for people, I think. And just community. But I'm going to thank you all and thank Michelle. And I'm going to stop recording now. But thank you guys. I appreciate it. This was wonderful.
Thank you.
You guys have a great rest of your week at Brushwood, and I'm very jealous, and I appreciate all your stories, and I hope to see you all next year.
Hope you make it through the storm.
Yes. Good luck with that storm, Shell. Da-na-na-na. Blah-blah-blah. Interlude music. I want to thank everyone who participated in my workshop so much. You guys made Brushwood and the festivals this year so much more meaningful than it has ever been. I had such a good time. So thank you from the bottom of my heart. I appreciate everyone and all your stories.
And I appreciate you letting me tap in and participate in the last workshop with you. I had a lot of fun, and it was so great to just hear these folks' stories, even though I couldn't be there.
You know, it almost felt like you were right there. We have been there together so many times, Shell. We have to go again. Hopefully next year we will both have seasonals there again, and we'll be able to fall asleep listening to those drums, or maybe even doing some drumming ourselves coming up soon.
But for now, we have to say till next year to Brushwood, and we hope that we can stay connected with some of the great folks that we interacted with and met this week.
I'm going to give you a spoiler. We already have. And our listeners, oh man, witches, hold on to your broomsticks, because
Dun, dun, dun.
we've got some great episodes coming up for you in the near future. So spoiler alert.
You better keep listening, because we got some surprises coming.
That's right. And keep it witchy.
Keep it witchy.